Later that year, John and Reyna were hunting, and they saw something John couldn't even believe. There was a pair of dragons in the sky. They followed the dragons and found there was actually several nests. John was awestruck at the sight. Though they were not as decorative as you see in the movies, he still had his fill of curiosity as he looked at the hatchlings. To his surprise, the young ones were not aggressive, but more simply curious. This would become a place they would have to check often. John asked, "So, is this as big as they get?" Motioning to the other dragons. "Yes, it seems to be at least 2 breeding pairs. Usually they only have 1 or 2 hatchlings a year, depending on hunting. However, dragons are migratory creatures." "Oh, so they'll be gone during the winter months." Yes, unless something is so plentiful that it makes them want to stay." John looked. "Has anyone tried taming them?" Rena, "A few. Don't tell me you're thinking of raising one." "I would if it made practical sense," he responded. That was the last they mentioned it until one day they spotted something in the fields. It was a large animal that they had severely wounded. John approached the creature with his rifle ready. As he got close, he could see that it was a wolf. There were arrows and bullet holes in it. One of its legs was broken and it looked exhausted. It was suffering from overexertion and dehydration. It seemed to give a little bit of a fight, but simply collapsed. It didn't lose consciousness, but it seemed to want to die. John rushed to get help and a wagon, of course. The townspeople were apprehensions about touching the animal as being so large, but it only groaned a little as they loaded it and brought it back to John's barn. Ren was already bringing up the surgery equipment, and the animal was placed on the table. It isn't any bigger than a extra large Malamute, so there's plenty of room. "Do you really think you can save that thing?" one of the men asked. John retorted, "If we can't, it'll make one hell of a barbecue." They work through the day getting out the bullets and setting bones. They stay up all night watching over it until they think it's going to be all right. The townspeople even help as John and Reyna go out looking for the rest of them. They find what's left near a large river. It is quite the task bringing the wounded animals back to the barn. They do find a few pups that escaped from being slaughtered, and the animals are scared for the barn. It will take a few weeks for them all to be healed, even if they use magic. Ren asks, "Who could have done this?" John responds, "It could have been either side. Look at this. These are standard rounds used by the Alliance, but this is ball ammo, and it's the same kind as the green scaled ones used. I can't really find anything special about the arrows. There's no markings, which tells me these were mass-produced. Both sides are mass-producing weapons, and the den was right on the line." Rihanna sighed. "Either way, they just killed so many that they could have took what they wanted." John responds, "Yeah, wars are like that. Everyone is quick to forget, and if they don't protect the world around them, it just won't be there. As wolves heal and get stronger, everyone is very curious when dealing with them. There was 1 or 2 close calls, of course. Though the animals seem to realize that the village is not going to hurt them, they're still animals. As the last one gets a splint taken off its leg, there's a bit of relief and sadness as the door to the barn is open and the wolves take off running. Even the youngest gets a running start, and it's off. They run past the village and disappear out of sight." "Oh, I'm going to miss them," John said. Rihanna said, "Almost like taking care of children." "Yeah," John said. Rihanna said, I guess it's good practice." John looks at Rena, confused for a moment, and then smiles. What, really?" He picks her up and spins her around. They kiss and hug aesthetically in the idea of being parents. It will still be several months before the time comes, but John wastes no time. He begins getting everything ready. The town even helps him build onto his house. As Rihanna begins to show, things are already getting set up. being pregnant doesn't seem to stop Reyna from going out with John and hunting and fishing. With the fruit coming into the season, they forge deep into the forest. Dodging the occasional troll and raider, they're able to get all what they need and more. Since they live the furthest away from town, it's important they get all they need for the winter months. As the winter months arrive, the weight of the snow can be heard on the support beams. They don't move from the cave. They may need to get the medical services. The cave is still a secret, of course. The birth is difficult, but Reyna soldiers through it. As the child emerges, John breathes a sigh of relief that the child does not have his mother's ears. It's a boy, healthy and strong. Reyna, he may have your ears, but I can feel the power inside him. John, not able to wipe the smile off his face. Then he can grow up to be as strong as his mother. They both smile at each other. As winter recedes, the boy is already crawling and getting into everything he can. He is not the only child born over the winter. 2 other children are born during the winter months. And with the arrival of even more children to the village, things seem to look like they did before the war even started. John began to enjoy his life again. Farming is not easy, but with a strong heart and a good woman at his side, he is grateful for everything he has. Late spring, they are both doing field work. The boy is being watched by a friend in town, and they both suddenly look up in the same direction. They can hear the sounds of battle as John pulls out a small set of binoculars that he had in his pocket. He looks in horror and sees a dragon flying, then it winces in pain and falls to the ground. Turning to look, he can see an Apache helicopter come into view. It has obviously just shot down the dragon. Both John and Reyna take off running towards the dragon's nest, worrying that all the dragons were gone. They grab what they need from inside the house and take off towards the mountains. But by the time they reach the dragon's nesting grounds, all they can smell is death. Dead dragons are everywhere, most of which look too young to have any offspring. John and Reyna check the nests. One of the nests had been hit by a cluster of rockets, and the other had been strafed and then shot with a missile. Though there were survivors, there were only a few. Either the nest was not easily seen from the sky, or the eggs had just not hatched yet, and they just looked like rocks. A yearling was alive, and she did not look good. They decided to get the rest of the village to help get this one into town. It takes a long time to rally the people to assist in carrying the animals down. It takes a couple of days to get them all down from the mountainside. The female that was still alive was not willing at first to be taken, though a shot of morphine calmed her right down. They all pulled together to get a shelter built on the side of the hill. The dragons were stored in there as John and Reyna worked on them. Only a few people would work closely with the dragons. I mean, they are dragons, of course. A full-grown dragon stands about 6 to 7 feet tall at the shoulders. With the tail included, they stretch more than 20 feet. The large wings, when expanded, make them look absolutely massive. John seems at ease working with such large animals. He tries to stay away from the hatchlings while he works with a female. He does get shoved a few times by the female, but it's more of a warning than a threat. For the young dragons, it is easy to train them, surprisingly. The yearling still has a wild streak in her and snaps at a few. She did not like being petted much at all, nor did she take food from anyone's hands. They had to feed her by placing a piece of meat on the end of a stick. It takes more than a month before the yearling is even able to stretch her wings to fly again. In that amount of time, the hatchlings have grown substantially. Though still only the size of a small dog, they are growing quickly. It is not uncommon for some of the children to come over and play with the hatchlings. One of the children finds out that they're still animals, and he gets bitten. The bite is not severe, but it's enough to keep people cautious, even though it was just a nip. As the time for the dragons to leave comes closer, another patrol of humans enters the village. This time, the entire convoy drives straight to the house. Reyna and John rush out to the wounded and get them on the tables. Most of the injuries are only needed stitched, but 5 require surgery. Ren and John work through the night along with one of the other medics to save the men. One turns out to be a dwarf, surprisingly. This surprises the hell out of John, but not Reyna. The next morning, they walk outside and take the officer in charge. The LT says, "Well, are they going to be all right?" John's stretching. "Well, they won't be storming any beaches for a while, but they should be fine." Lieutenant responds, Thank you so much." John says, "One of them is going to take months before he's back on his feet. You can't move any of them for a couple of days." The LT looks at his watch and then pulls out a piece of paper and reads it, then says, "All right, I'll make accommodations in town, but a few will stay here to watch over them." Rihanna chimes in, "Perhaps we will be here for the celebration." "Celebration of what?" "It's not harvest season." John says, "No, it's not an annual event." The soldiers are sitting on the far side of the house when one sees a few children coming out of the far barn. At first, it looks like a couple of dogs are following them. Then one of them took flight, and the other soldier realized what he's seeing and suddenly yells, "Dragons!"